Welcome back, Raider Nation. It is week 1 in the NFL. Your Raiders go down to Los Angeles. They will face the Los Angeles Chargers at SoFi Stadium at 1-something p.m. on Sunday. And we're here to talk about it, Silver and Black today. My co-host, Mo Moten, Skockle Branson here. Mo, are you ready for some real football? As I mentioned last show, I'm ready. I don't know about you.
I had no choice to get ready. Just a lot on the plate, but Raider focus, fantasy football focus, betting focus. It's all on the platter. It's all on the menu for me. But I have a unique. I'm not a unique, but I have a very in-depth look at the Chargers. So I got a lot of good questions for Nick today.
That's good. And we're going to get right into it and preview the Chargers. We kind of usually do this in the second segment. We want to do it right from the front because we're excited because it's week 1. What can I say? We're eager to go. And to do that, we bring in a very familiar face to us here at Silver and Black today, and that is Nick Cothrel. He's the publisher of the Sports Illustrated. It's a Chargers report, right, Nick?
Yep, ChargerReport.com, part of SI Media Network.
Yes, he's part of Sports Illustrated, and Nick was a writer for us at Silver and Black today back when he was in college, and he's doing well. We're very, very proud of him. I know Raider fans have a mixed reaction because you're covering the Chargers now, but we forgive you for that. I used to be a Charger fan as a kid, so some people have never let me down on that one. But Nick,
just really quick, Scott, I just want to announce that I'm the only person on this show right now who has no affiliation to the Chargers.
That is true, but you do to the Jets, and that's a whole different story. Right?
That's a family thing. That's a family thing.
That's a family thing. I got it. All right. So Nick, listen, you're the publisher of that SI site. You cover the Chargers every day. You're at the facility. You're covering the practices. I want to start out and asking you about the Chargers and expectations this year. The expectations, it's a familiar story for the Chargers, actually. Very high expectations and seemingly unable to live up to them for all sorts of reasons, including injuries and things like that. But now they come in, they've improved the team. They have a guy that the Raider fans know really well, Khalil Mack, on the defensive side of the ball. Offense continues. Justin Herbert, Eckler's there at running back. When you look at this team, are the expectations in line with the talent level they have, and will they live up to those expectations?
Yeah, the expectations couldn't be any higher, right? Everything they did this offseason has just really been an all-in approach. Kind of seizing the opportunity with Justin Herbert on his rookie deal. So, they're going to need to win to meet those expectations, and that's not going to be easy with the AFC West. And, all 4 teams really have a legit shot. So they're going to have to, live up to that. And it's going to be something where the defense, which was a bottom 3 unit last year, is going to have to try and match what the offense was able to do just a season ago.
Now, Nick, you mentioned that defense. How confident are you that the Chargers have fixed their run defense? As you mentioned, just pretty much a sieve on the interior. So the Raiders coming in with Josh Jacobs, Zamir White, Brandon Bolden, Amir Abdullah. What is your confidence level on Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson? I believe they also brought in. Can those guys shore up the interior of that defense?
I think they can. It's tough to tell right now because during, none of them played in the preseason, and just during camp, they're not exactly tackling ball carriers to the ground or anything, but it seems like it's a lot better. And Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson, both those 2 guys, they stopped the run near the top of the league with how they offer, their contributions and run support. And so both those guys have been flying around. Sebastian Joseph Day is really been kind of one of the vocal leaders across that defensive line. And it seems better, but it's ultimately going to be a wait and see approach.
Yeah, again, talking to Nick Cothrel from Sports Illustrated Chargers Report. Make sure you check them out. And he is talking about this year's Charger unit. Now, Nick, we look at this Chargers team, and I mentioned some of that offensive firepower. I answered Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert gets lauded for being a top 4 quarterback, I think, in most things that I see. Unbelievable talent. People point out to the lack of success, which I always say that's not true because that's a team issue, just like Derek Carr with the Raiders. He's had the same kind of thing. But you look at Justin Herbert now heading into this season. How's that maturity level? Because he's performance-wise been great. He's had steps forward, steps back. But is he at that level now from your perception where he's ready to take that next step, lead his team into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think he's ready. And I think he, as Raider fans saw, like what he was doing in Week 18, last year he could have done that, but the defense really kind of dropped the ball. So what Justin Herbert's been able to do his first 2 seasons has been, the best, first 2 years of a quarterback based on touchdowns and passing yards. So offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi for the Chargers said last year was about them learning a new system, and it was more of like football 101, and now they've kind of turned that page to football 202. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they both, voiced their confidence in knowing the offense more, and they were a top 5 unit last year. So like those 2 guys, already being in sync with Justin Herbert, and they're all saying that they're a lot more confident this year. Who knows what that offense is going to look like now?
So, Nick, I just want to know, you're close to the team, and I talked about this with Scott on our last show. How much chatter is there about how the last season ended? Is there still a sour taste in the Chargers' mouth to the point they're still talking about it publicly to the media, saying we needed to avenge that loss, and it was embarrassing to lose to the Raiders in that fashion, where you see Justin Herbert kind of mouthing, I never wanted a tie so bad. So does that come up in conversation with the media?
It came up a lot more during like the start of OTAs when the players met with the media for the first time to kind of start this off season. But today, Derwin James spoke, as well as Brandon Staley. They were both asked, and both of them said, that was months behind us now, and they've kind of acting like they put that in the rear view, and they're just moving forward, kind of living in the now. But it's hard to say, right? Like that has to still be sitting in the back of the minds of some of these returners. Now the defense is going to have 6 new starters, so there's also a lot of players that weren't even part of that game, which for week 1, maybe that's a better thing. maybe it's something where the returners can use it as motivation. I don't know, but the message that they're trying to send across to the media is that they've kind of put that behind them.
They're really quick, though, before you go in, Scott. Now, you mentioned that defense and guys that are coming in that are new may not have that sour taste in their mouth as players who were there. One of those players being J.C. Jackson. What is the update on him? I heard Taylor Bisciotti on NFL Network say that not expected to play, but then there was a report that he's out of his walking boot, and they want to see if he can practice later in the week. Maybe he's more doubtful than questionable or probable. Now, if he's not out there, is it a combination of Michael Davis stepping in with Asante Samuel and Bryce Callahan? Because I know people are going to say, well, J.C. Jackson's not playing. Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, those guys are going to feast. But Michael Davis has been a starter in this league. I believe 6 interceptions and 35 pass breakups in the last 3 years. Bryce Callahan, experienced slot guy, played under Vic Fangio. Brandon Staley comes from the Fangio coaching tree, knows the scheme. So I think Asante Samuel was also rookie of the month one month last year. So not necessarily they were deep at that position. Not to say that J.C. Jackson, he's not a loss, but they're pretty set even if he doesn't play. Correct?
Yeah, I think they are pretty deep. So JC, back to real quick on the J.C. Jackson situation. Like you said, there's been kind of some conflicting reports about whether or not he's going to play. Brandon Staley said today that he's day to day, and that the walking boot has just came off, and that he was running. So I don't know exactly what that running looks like. He wasn't out at practice today during the viewing portion to the media. And he wasn't out on Monday either. So the 2 days this week he hasn't been present. So he was on the injury report, of course, and that he's just going to kind of be a wait and see. So if he can't go, it's like you mentioned, it's going to be Michael Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. on the outside. Both those guys were the starters for the Chargers last year, so it's not like they're exactly throwing a rookie in there who hasn't played a bunch of meaningful games. And then in the nickel they have Bryce Callahan, who he's played both inside and outside. So even if they were to kind of get into a pinch, they can use him in a variety of different ways to match up. But regardless, like not having J.C. Jackson, you can't underestimate his presence, and especially matching up against the Raiders with Devontae Adams. J.C. is that guy that would have mirrored him. He's a guy that you can just have him go one-on-one. Without J.C. Jackson, they probably resort more to some zone looks and stuff.
Interesting stuff. And one of the things, of course, Nick, covering the AFC West, The Raiders' story this offseason has been the right side of the offensive line. The Chargers had their own competition at right tackle. Trey Pipkins was named the starter. Talk about what he did, how his performance was, and how they solved or how he won that position, and how that line now stacks up for the Chargers, who've been seemingly working on it for years.
Yeah, I mean, their right side of their offensive line is being pieced together, kind of like the Raiders. They drafted Zion Johnson. He's going to pencil in as the right guard, so we'll kind of see how he comes along. But he looks like a strong, good young kid. And then at right tackle, Trey Pipkins, him and Storm Norton were in a position battle in training camp. They were splitting the reps 50-50 when they were doing 11-on-11s in practice. They split the reps throughout the preseason. Pipkins ultimately won the job. I wouldn't say it was a camp battle where he necessarily ran away with it. There were moments where he looked like Trey Pipkins of last year when he came into the game and such. But at the end of the day, the coaching staff said that, what was the ultimate deciding factor was they felt that when Trey Pipkins was in there, the pass rushers were a little bit further away from the quarterback than when Storm Norton was in there. So he's the guy that they've settled in on. Pipkins, he spent the offseason with Duke Manyweather in Texas, who also trains Rashawn Slater. So, both those tackles have, they spent extensive time together working, and Slater has voiced, how much progress he's seen from Pipkins. I don't really have a whole lot to go off of since I was covering the Rams last year, and I've only seen what Pipkins has looked like this camp, but yeah, it's probably gonna be the spot where the Raiders look to exploit, because he's gonna have his hands full with either Max or Chandler Jones.
So speaking of spots, the Raiders are able to exploit. How about that linebacker core? I know Kenneth Murray hasn't exactly lived up to first-round expectations. I know he had, I believe, an ankle surgery this offseason. Drew Tranquil has been hurt recently. Missed a few games last year. Missed almost all of 2020 with an injury. They bring in Kyle Van Noy. Where is he going to line up? Is he going to be on the outside? Is he going to be on the inside? Because I know he's a versatile playmaker and he can play both positions. So just fill us in on the linebacker spot, because I know Darren Waller is going to be active and he's going to be in the middle of that field.
Yeah, so Kyle Van Noy, when he was originally brought in, he was kind of viewed as that chess piece that's going to, probably do a little bit of both, play some inside linebacker, maybe, rush off the edge if they're, giving Mac or Bosa a breather. But he's worked pretty much exclusively at inside linebacker. Like I really haven't seen him play, the edge position much at all. So it's the inside linebackers are going to be Drew Tranquil and Kyle Van Noy. And then, like you kind of alluded to with Kenneth Murray coming off ankle surgery, he's only been back for 2 weeks now. So I would expect him to probably, if he plays, it's going to be probably a pretty minimal role, at least here in week 1. But even when he is fully back, he's probably still not going to be the starter. It's going to be Van Noy and Tranquil. And then they also have Troy Reeder. So right now it kind of seems like Troy Reeder and Kenneth Murray are kind of fighting for that like third linebacker role. And that's going to get shaken out. And Troy Reeder's a guy, while he's a new addition, he played for Brandon Staley with the Rams. So he's a guy that's really familiar with the scheme, a guy that's, a core special teamer. So Kenneth Murray, he's going to have his work cut out to get back on the field. But I will say for a guy that's missed a lot of time, during like the team period and drills that we've been able to see, he has looked pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting unit to say the least. Talk about Brandon Staley, Nick. The situation that we've seen him with the kind of the riverboat gambler, he's going for it on fourth down. He's taken a lot of heat over that. I know he's talked about it publicly too, and what it's meant for his team last year as the coach. How has he changed? Is he going to still have that type of mentality, or what's the next evolution of Brandon Staley as he matures as a head coach?
Yeah, so he's talked about like his what people call like the fourth and Staley mentality. It's tough to tell if it's gonna if and when exactly it's gonna change. He's talked about it's common. There's a lot of factors that really go into it. The way I've interpreted it like he's probably gonna end up reeling it back at least a little bit. And now he has a defense that's at least closer to matching the offense. So if if you have the defense that you have more confidence in, who's going to come up with a stop, and then you can get the offense the ball back, maybe you do just end up like punting or even just taking the points in some situations. Now, I don't think like his aggressive nature is ever going to go away, because that's who he is. And Justin Herbert, when you have Justin Herbert under center, your chances of converting a fourth down are much greater than if you have Mitchell Trubisky. At the same time, you still have Justin Herbert in your back pocket. So that's going to be kind of interesting how that shakes out this year.
So, Nick, before I send you off, I just want to know if the Raiders are going to win this game, what do they have to do very well against this Chargers team? Like, what are the weak points on this Charger team? And on the Chargers side, if the Chargers are going to win this game, what do they have to do really well, Raiders?
I think if the Raiders are going to win this game, I think Devontae Adams goes off for a huge day, which, could happen if J.C. Jackson's not out there. I mean, even if J.C. Jackson is out there, everyone knows what Devontae Adams is capable of. And then on top of that, I think the Raiders probably really, attack Trey Pipkins at right tackle and, generate a lot of pressure. Now, I will say, like, during the Chargers joint practice with the Cowboys that they had, that was something that was pretty clear. Like, the Cowboys were bringing a lot of pressure off that right side, and they were getting to Herbert pretty quickly. So that was something where he was having to get the ball up pretty quick, wasn't able to really hang on to it. So if that's the case again here against the Raiders, that could be something that really holds the Chargers back. And then on the flip side, if the Chargers are going to win this, I think it really just comes down to them winning the battle in the trenches on both sides. And just, Austin Eckler led the league with 20 touchdowns last season. So, is he gonna be a guy that's looks like, the 2021 version of Austin Eckler? And then everyone knows how, consistent Keenan Allen has been. So I just think that Chargers are returning pretty much every starter except the two right guard, right tackle of their offense. And they were a top 5 unit just a season ago. So I think it's going to come down to, can they kind of reciprocate that?
Interesting. And Nick,
so really quick, Scott, before you jump in,
I
just want to say, so basically, Nick said whoever's right side of the offensive line stinks the least has the best chance to win the football game.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what he said. Yes. Nick, before I let you go too, we talked before we went on the air about the AFC West and how crazy it's going to be, and it's a focus of the NFL overall, just because it's so dang competitive. I know on the website it's hard, right, picking and predicting how the division goes. Mo and I did our prediction show earlier in the week, and we had our records for the Raiders, and we had 3 teams in the AFC West going to the playoffs. It looks by you picked the Chiefs to win again. You picked the Chargers second. And I'm sorry to do this to you because I know Raider Nation is going to come after you. You picked the Raiders last with a 9-8 record. But that could very easily go the other direction too. Talk about that. Talk about, for you, covering the Chargers, but looking at the rest of the division and how many division games the Chargers and the Raiders play early on.
Yeah, so I have the Chiefs winning the AFC West, the Chargers being second, the Raiders third, and then the Broncos fourth.
Oh, sorry. Now, I misconstrued.
All good. Now, Scott, like as we were talking about before we came on air, like really this could come down to any team winning the division. We're kind of splitting hairs here because all these teams, what they did this offseason and just how they're constructed. They're all capable of making the playoffs and making a run. But it's going to be interesting. And I think we're going to get a real sense of it real quick, just because the Chargers open up with 2 division games right off the bat, with week 2 coming on a short week. Thursday night, they got to go to Kansas City. I think you shared like the Raiders play 3 divisional matchups within their first 5 weeks. So all these teams are kind of just getting thrown into the fire. And, these games usually come down to about 1 possession. If, Raiders fans know, like, these AFC West matchups usually come all the way down to the wire. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for this game on Sunday.
Yeah, it's gonna be bananas, I'm sure. I picked them to win. I picked the Raiders to win. Mo picked the Chargers to win. I just have to remind people of that because he's taken some heat over this week. with tweets with the video. Yeah, he's got it. But it'll be interesting, and I know we'll catch up with you down towards the back end of the season as the Raiders line up against the Chargers in Las Vegas again, which I'm sure will be a pivotal game as it always is, like it was last year. But make sure you follow Nick at Nick Cothrel on Twitter. Does great work again. He covered the Raiders before, so he's an alum, and we appreciate him, and we're so proud of what he's been able to do. Even though I know you guys hate the Chargers, Nick is doing a great job with SI. Nick, thanks for joining us, man. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Mo.
All right, there you go. Nick Cothrel, one of the good guys, and good stuff there. Good insight, Mo.
Yeah, I got super hyped because I've been covering the Chargers a lot because, full disclosure, as you've heard in the last show, and if you read my articles, I actually have the Chargers winning the division by 1 win. I had the Chargers going 11-6, and every other team in that division going 10-7, with the Raiders and the Chiefs having a playing game in Week 18 at Allegiant Stadium for that last playoff spot. So, had a lot of intel on the Chargers, so it was great to have Nick on so we could talk about it.
Yeah, and don't come at me about the Chargers winning division. I didn't say it. Mo said it. Just to be clear.
Yeah, I put it out there.
Because of my history, people are going to think I've turned back to the wrong side again. But anyway, thanks again to Nick Cothrel from Sports Illustrated, the Chargers Report. Good stuff. So there you go. You got everything you need to know about the Raiders' opponent on Sunday. We're going to step aside when we come back. Mo and I are going to go over some news. Is Darren Waller close to a new contract? We'll talk about that amongst other things in Raider Nation. You're listening to Silver and Black Today here, an Odyssey original podcast. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Silver and Black Today, week 1 of the 2022 NFL season. Scott Branson, Mo Moten back with you here, and we are talking all things Raiders football. Do us a favor. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. If you're listening on audio, do it there. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit subscribe, plus the notifications bell so you know when we go on the air and when new videos are uploaded. Yes, you can find out that way, but we thank you guys for your support as always. All right, Mo, we got to jump into this. We started talking Chargers to start the show, but we got to talk about kind of some of the news, or at least some speculation that leaked out from very reputable sources, including our friend Vinny Bonsignor at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, that the Raiders seemingly seem close, or they're hearing, as our national sources, that the Raiders are getting closer on Darren Waller on a deal. This is something you've predicted would happen. Now, what that deal is a different issue, but you said, hey, probably right before the season, they'll take care of him, they'll give him a raise, whatever it may be. Now we're seeing that. This comes after he fired his agent, hired Drew Rosenhaus, which we talked to about at length here. And sure enough, it seems like those two sides said, all right, whatever shenanigans were happening earlier, let's get down to business. They might have Darren Waller feeling pretty dang good when he rolls out on the field on Sunday against the Chargers.
This is very similar to the Derek Carr situation last year when people said, oh, Derek Carr's got to play out his contract. And he had little or no guaranteed money left on his deal. And I said, no way his agent lets him take another snap without reworking his deal. And the same applies to Darren Waller. The production he's put up with the Raiders over the last 2-3 years, no way that his agent, whoever it was, whether it was Clutch or Drew Rosenhaus, they weren't going to let him step on the field without getting at least a reworked deal. Now, I said one way or another, they were going to take care of him. They were going to give him a multi-year extension, which it seems like that's, according to Jordan Schultz, who's an NFL insider, said those talks are heating up, or they were going to give him immediate pay raise for the 2022 season. But either way, I said, take a deep breath. They're going to take care of Darren Waller, who's one of their core players in that offense, because the reason you bring in Devontae Adams is to open up the offense for guys like him and Hunter Renfrow. So with those three guys together, you have a prolific offense. There's no way you let one of those guys walk, because then you say, well, offense is still good, but it's not as good without Darren Waller. So really quick shout out to Just Win Wendy. He was a little nervous about Darren Waller. Just hang in there, Wendy. I told you to trust me. And here we are.
Yes. And again, we don't know. I know all of the reports said they're getting close. They may have something done by Friday, which would be great for both sides. No question. What that looks like will end up being, and we won't know perhaps unless somebody on the national stage gets it, which it seems to be the way it goes usually, and gives us an idea of what that contract is. Is it going to be an extension? Is it going to be a whole new contract? They rip up the old one, start a new one, as you mentioned. We don't know yet. Doesn't really matter. As long as Darren Waller feels good about where he's at and that he's getting paid fairly, we're good, right? And what it means to the Raiders and their overall salary cap, that's what it'll have to do. But again, the salary cap goes up next year, and so they might feel like they're in a position. Also, did it factor into them maybe not going out to get a veteran offensive lineman?
It might have, especially if there's an immediate bump in his salary for the 2022 season. That may have factored into it. But what I will say is that there are guys out there who aren't going to cost you a lot. Bobby Massey is going to cost you a fortune. I feel like if the Raiders really wanted another right tackle or another guard, they would have picked one up. It's pretty clear to me, at least right now, as we're recording this, that they're comfortable with what they have and they're willing to roll with the guys that they had. Because remember, these guys got a lot of snaps in the preseason. So if you're bringing in a guy, that guy is probably not going to start week 1 because he hasn't been on the team.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, we're just going to roll what we got, see what happens week 1, throw them into the fire with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, see what we get. If they fare well, then maybe we can go through the season with that. Now, if they stumble and Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa wreck the game with combined 6, 7, 8 sacks, then you'll probably see some action where they go out and pick up another tackle. I know that's to the chagrin of many Raider fans. They don't want to hear that, but when you think about 2 premier players at the position, that's a tough task for even Colton Miller, who's the solid guy on that offensive line. So just imagine Jermaine Illuminar or Thayer Mumford coming in against those guys. It's a tough matchup.
And we heard on Wednesday from Josh McDaniels. We heard from Derek Carr. We heard from Devontae Adams. And I think you hit on something that's really important. I think McDaniels, at least publicly, and it seems like based on their actions, that they do have confidence, that they have what they need unless proven otherwise. And you just made that point, right? Which is we're going to roll with these guys. We think we have it. We have a quarterback who does have a quick release, by the way. He gets the ball out quick, and he's got a lot of weapons to do that, whether it's in the short, mid-area game or in the long game. He's able to get the ball out quickly. And if that's the case, and they're able to perform at a good level, they don't even have to be great. If they're at a good level where Derek Carr gets enough time to hit those weapons, then why would you spend the money? Now, depth and moving on to the future as far as when injuries pop up and all that, that's a different story. We'll have to see where it goes with that. But you might want to wait. And I think the Raiders are being very prudent with that and with their money. But I don't think they'll have any problem, Mo, spending money, whether it's at offensive line or anywhere else, to go get somebody if they truly believe that person can help them this year.
The other thing to think about is if Derek Carr is in trouble in the pocket because the tackles aren't protecting him, they can protect him with the run game.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked Nick about what's his confidence level and how the Chargers address the interior of the defensive line, bringing in Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, who has experience under Brandon Staley from his time with the Rams. And he kind of said it's kind of a wait and see because, you can only do so much on the practice field. But I'm sure the Raiders are going to test that because the Chargers were one of the worst run defenses last year. And you have Josh Jacobs, you have Zamir White, Brendan Bolden, Amir Abdullah. Those guys could get a lot of work. I know a lot of people want to see Devontae Adams and Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow go off. But looking at the past weakness for the Chargers, I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders go out there and go run heavy just to test that area of their defense again and prove that they could stop it. And if they can't stop it, then I think the Raiders have an edge there because you can attack over the top with Darren Waller and those guys, or you can run the ball with a balanced attack.
Great point. And I think we look at this game, and I know on our last show, our last full show, we had a mailbag show yesterday, but on Tuesday's show, we talked about our predictions for the season, and you and I differed on this game. I picked the Raiders, you picked the Chargers. I think we both picked them as pretty close games and not extremely high scoring games, by the way. But when you look at this matchup, what do the Raiders, knowing that defense, knowing the Raiders' issues on the offensive line, is it going to be about that offensive line, or is this going to be a situation where it's a little bit of both, right? Because they're going to have to control Justin Herbert. They're going to have to control Austin Eckler and that running game too, which we don't know how that's going to work out for the Raiders up the middle. When you look at this game, if the Raiders are going to win, what do they do effectively that makes the difference?
I think Nick hit the nail, and I know I made a joke of it, but it's basically, which team's offensive line, specifically on the right side, performs better. And I think if the Raiders are going to win this game, and I alluded to him in our last, talk conversation, is that they're going to have a balanced attack. I know J.C. Jackson's not playing, so everyone's licking their chops about that. But as I brought up with Nick, Michael Davis isn't a slouch. He was a starter for the last few years. Asante Samuel Jr. had an up and down rookie year, got benched at some point, but played relatively well for a rookie. And then you got Bryce Callahan, who has the experience, as Nick said, on the inside and outside, played in the Fangio scheme, so he knows that system. So there's no problem to plug him in. So I think what has to happen is, again, the Raiders have to be balanced. Run the ball. Test the Chargers' interior run defense. See if Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson are ready for those two physical ball carriers you have in Zamir White and Josh Jacobs. And then once the Chargers feel like they have to commit, put an extra defender in the box, you throw over the top. Go to Darren Waller down the seam. Go to Devontae Adams, who can win his one-on-one matchups, especially if J.C. Jackson's not out there. I know J.C. Jackson's their best cornerback, and they do have depth there, but none of those cornerbacks that the Chargers have can compare to Devontae Adams, arguably the best wide receiver in the league. Hunter Renfrow on the slot. Test Bryce Callahan. I know he knows the system. First year with the team, though. Hunter Renfrow, one of the premier slot wide receivers in the league. Test that defense all over the field, poke and prod around and see where the weakness is, and have a balanced attack.
Good point. Now, we look at the Raiders defense. I think this is going to be key, right? And this is the key all season long because of the AFC West, because of the quarterbacks, because of the offensive play. Now, you talked about the line. The right side of the Chargers line, as Nick told us, with Taylor Pitkins there is tough. I mean, it's the same issue the Raiders have. Yes, he won out in camp, but he's not exactly a Pro Bowler. So they're going to have to see how he evolves there and how well he does. So the Raiders obviously will attack that. But at the same time, you have to deal with the running game with the Chargers, but you also have to deal with the passing game with Justin Herbert. I think this first big test of the Raiders' defensive backfield will be very interesting. How do they deal with it? How does Nate Hobbs perform if he's playing outside? We'll see where he goes there. And how do those safeties react in those new positions on the road against this team and this offense? We'll get an early sense, Mo, I think, of how that defensive backfield is going to play the rest of the way.
And the other thing that I wanted to mention is Nick kind of gave us the gem right there for the game plan. Yep. Overload the right side of the Chargers offensive line. You have a rookie in Zion Johnson there at right guard. You have Trey Pipkins there who had an underwhelming camp, even though he won the right tackle spot. Overload the right side of the line and test those guys on that side, because Trey Pipkins, to me, I'm not sold on him. I've watched him play over the last few years. He's had opportunities to get that starting right tackle job. Storm Norton was there for a reason last year. So Trey Pipkins is not a guy I'm looking at and saying, oh, he can hold his own on an island with a Max Crosby or Chandler Jones or even a Malcolm Kuntz. I think Malcolm Kuntz can even get in there. And as I said, overload the right side of the Chargers offensive line, get to the quarterback, force Herbert to throw the quick passes, and he won't have time to throw downfield deep. And you have a chance to slow him down, slow that Chargers offense down.
And I know our audience is Raiders fan, but these types of games, and we're talking about the strengths and weaknesses of both sides, and somehow they mirror each other. This is going to be hard all year, Mo, with this AFC West. It's just these teams all have gotten better. They all still have weaknesses, no question. All teams do. But the fact that they somehow look so similar is pretty remarkable. And so these games are going to be knockdown dragouts. And I think that this game on Sunday, I've picked the Raiders to win. It's a big game because I think the Chargers, frankly, need it more because, like Nick said, they're going to Kansas City on a short week in week 2 on Thursday Night Football. And so if they lose to the Raiders at home and go to the Chiefs, tough one to win there. So let's just say they don't. They start the AFC West at 0-2. Can you recover from 0-2 in this AFC West?
You can, but you don't want to dig yourself in the early hole that way, especially, losing 2 games back to back. And that's going to be a sour note in the locker room if they lose both. But you bring up a good point. If you go 0-2 and you're looking up at the Chargers and the Chiefs, the Raiders and the Chiefs, and then you have the Denver Broncos going against the Seattle Seahawks on Monday night, they're going to win that game. They're going to crush the Seahawks.
Right.
So you're probably looking at those teams all winning their games and then you starting off 0-2 as the Chargers. So big game, not just because of what happened last year in week 18, as I brought up with Nick, the Raiders keeping them out of the playoffs, but also just looking ahead and turning the page. You don't want to start off 0-2, especially within the division.
No question. All right, we're going to step aside and take a break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up. We're going to do a couple things. Number one, we'll talk a little bit more about the game and who some of the players Mo and I think will go off for the Raiders as well, and how they'll make a difference in the game, win or lose. We'll do that. And then we're going to get into a little fantasy football because I don't know, somebody's playing somebody. I think I'm playing Mo in week 1 in the Silver and Black Today Fantasy League. So we're going to talk about that. We have to place some sort of bet. Got to. So we got to figure out what that's going to be. And we'll do it with you on the fly. So we'll come up with that when we get back here on Silver and Black Today. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate the support. We are talking Raiders. We are talking Chargers. Week 1 in the NFL. Are you excited, Raider Nation? We think you are. We are. We're ready for football. I am Scott Branson. He is Mo Moten. Mo is the national NFL writer for Bleacher Report. He covers it all, as well as being the Raiders columnist up on sportsnaut.com. So you can get his work in both spots. Follow him on Twitter at Mo Moten, MoEMoton, and at LV Gully is me. You can follow me there too. The show is at SNB Today. We appreciate the interactions. They always have a blast. Okay, Mo, we did our predictions on Tuesday for the season, but this game, I want to talk about players that we'll think will make a big difference. And specifically, I want to start that Raiders offense, right, has not been completely on the field during preseason. So they're going to go out there. I expect a little bit of rust at the beginning. Okay, Devontae Adams, that guy's such a freak of an athlete. I don't expect any from him. But I think the rest of them will get their timing down. It'll happen pretty quickly because they're all veterans. But when I look at this game, I know Nick Cothrel, who was with us in the first segment from SI and covers the Chargers, said, he feels Devontae Adams could have a big game. No question. I think that's every game he could have a big game. But I think in this game, I think 2 people are going to make the biggest difference, right? And I think that is going to be Josh Jacobs. I know we haven't talked a lot about him because we're talking about Zamir White. We're talking about Abdullah, all these guys. I think Josh Jacobs and Hunter Renfrow are going to have the biggest offensive days for the Raiders.
You took the Hunter Renfrow answer right out of my mouth. I was going to say, I think the Hunter Renfrow Bryce Callahan matchup is the matchup you want to exploit. And not because Bryce Callahan is not a good corner. But again, first year with the Chargers, I know he knows the system, but he's got to get his feet wet. And I'm wondering if Hunter Renfrow being on track coming into the season, coming off of a big year, getting paid, get the bag, Hunter Renfrow. But I think he's going to go off against this Charger team. And I think using him in the middle of the field will exploit some weaknesses there, because sometimes your linebackers are going against a slot wide receiver, and I think linebacker is a weak spot for the Chargers. Not that I don't believe in Calvin Noah; he's a fine player, a versatile playmaker, but I think you want to test the middle of that Chargers defense, because I think that's probably going to be the weakest part of their defense between the front, the middle, and the back end. A lot of Waller in the middle of the field, a lot of Hunter Renfrow in the middle of the field. Not to say Devontae won't go off, but I think Hunter Renfrow will be the key. The other guy I want to bring up, I think it's going to be a Max Crosby day. I think Max Crosby is going to, yes. On the defensive side, I think Max Crosby is going to go off. I think a combination between him and Kuntz, not to just count Chandler Jones, who's now known as Old Spice. But I think Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuntz on that defensive line are really going to test the Chargers' pass protection. A lot of talk about what the Raiders' offensive line is going to look like. The Chargers, specifically on the right side, not set. And I think the Raiders can rack up some sacks there and pressure Herbert and get things done. So I think it's going to be a close game. I also think it's going to be a shootout. I have both teams scoring into the 30s. It's going to be a toss-up game. It's going to remind you a lot of that Ravens-Raiders game where it could go into overtime and it could come down to one mistake. If a team makes one mistake, that could decide the game.
Yeah, and you said it earlier, though. I think the Raiders will surprise people and will run more than you would expect. Mm-hmm. Because we're all waiting for that explosion in the passing game.
Yep.
I think they're going to exploit some of the some of the Chargers defense with the running game. And Josh Jacobs, look, he's still the number 1 back until he's not. He's rested, he's healthy, and I expect him he's got something to prove. And so I expect him to go out there and ball. Not that other players won't contribute, because I think you're going to see, as you know, from Josh McDaniel's system, the use of different running backs in different situations. We'll see that, especially in this first game. But I like that as well. Yeah, and on the defense, you're right. Max Crosby as well. And I'm really just eager to watch the defensive backfield. They have not been fully together. They have not played at the level of competition they're going to get in week 1. And so I'm really interested, and I'm going to focus on that a lot. I think they'll come along well, but how well they play could end up being whether or not that big play at the end of the game is made or not made based on the Chargers passing the ball and trying to put up big, long plays in crunch time.
Here's my hot take. I'm more worried, or should I say concerned, about the Raiders' secondary than I am their offensive line. Because you can scheme around offensive line weaknesses for at least the game. Again, max protection. You could run the ball a whole lot. Derek Carr has a quick release to get rid of the football too. You can plan short routes. But you cannot hide poor cornerback play. And I'm not saying Nate Hobbs and Rocky Ya-Sin are going to be poor, but they're going to be challenged by Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Both those guys had over 1,100 receiving yards last year. So, as you said, with Rocky Ya-Sin not playing a lot in the preseason, I know Nate Hobbs had some snaps on the outside. Not too worried about Nate Hobbs, but he is switching back outside. So you wonder about that transition. I know I've made the point that he played there in college, so it should be like riding a bike. But that first game could be a little bit rocky after playing most of your snaps in the slot in your first year. My main concern is Rocky Ya-Sin, though. He's going to have to step it up. He's going to have to develop on the spot, and he's going to have to play up to his potential because he didn't exactly do that with Indianapolis. He's the guy I'm looking at. If he has a bad game, the Raiders could be in trouble.
No question. And I'm still sticking with the Raiders. I'm going to pick them. I picked them as a 1-point winner, I think, on our prediction show. And I really think it's going to be something. I think it's going to be like 31-30. Somebody's going to have a blocked extra point. Something crazy is going to happen. And I think you're going to have one of those old school AFC West battles. Are you still sticking with the Chargers, Mo?
Yes, and I like how you're throwing me under the bus in this episode, reminding people that I picked the Chargers. But I will say that in the column that I dropped today on Bleacher Report, where we had to pick against the spread, there are 7 panelists. I'm one of them, and 6 panelists picked the Raiders against the spread. I said 35-34 Chargers. So again, I have it as pretty much a toss-up. If you're betting against the spread, if you're putting money on the line, take the Raiders in this game because it's going to be a 1-2 point game. I won't name who the other panelist was that picked the Chargers, but his point was that if there's so much buzz around the Chargers and they're coming into the season healthy, it's not a stretch to think that the Chargers win by a little more than a field goal. Let's say 4 points. Let's say it's 35-31.
Yeah.
You say that's pretty much still a toss-up game. I believe the line when the column came out was at 3.5. So even the bettors, even the odds makers are saying this is pretty much a toss-up game. Now we know the jokes about the Raiders that being their second home in Los Angeles. So I don't really count home field advantage here as an advantage for the Chargers. I think it's just a matter of, and I brought this up with Nick, and I know he said the players dismissed it after OTAs, and now as you get close to the game, they're more turning the page. But I really believe that this Chargers team really looks at that Week 18 game and they're like, we have to get revenge for that. There's no way we can come back.
Division rival.
Right, division rival, and lose consecutive games. I know there's a big gap in between, but lose consecutive games to the Raiders and then have to go to Arrowhead and look the Chiefs in the face and try to avoid 0-2. I think I hate to use the must-win phrase early, especially for Week 1. I'm not saying this is a must-win, but I think they look at this Week 1 game as we got to have this game.
It's pretty close. I mean, like I said, and as you just mentioned again, to go 0-2 and in the division at the same time. It's not like you started off with 2 NFC teams and you're not worried about the division race. That would be 0-2. And so in some ways, I believe that too. I think they have to try to win. I think the Raiders still spoil their night, but I do think that it is that for them. It's that important. So we'll see how it nets out. We'll see how our predictions net out, how you guys, I know how you all feel. You think they're going to beat the Chargers and then the house is going to be full of silver and black. We'll see if that goes or if the Charger hype has worked enough that they didn't sell their tickets, which I doubt. But we'll see. We'll see how it all goes down on Sunday. Before we step aside, we have to talk about fantasy football. Of course, the Silver and Black Today Fantasy Football League, Kelly Kreiner, myself, our producer David Stepanian, and Mo. We are the show representatives, and then we have a bunch of listeners in there. You guys know who you are. We will start listing them out once we get through the season. But Mo, this first week, you and I play each other. The projections have me winning, but we know those projections never matter. They're always wrong with the numbers that the league gives you. Is like, here's your projected number. Doesn't account for a lot of jazz. But you look at the matchup between us and fantasy football, I'm actually going to give you a little bit of an edge this week on this one. Even though the points say I win, I still think that I've had a couple situations I've picked up. I've done some streaming of defense and some other acquisitions. I know as you were active on the wire the last couple days, as was Kelly, everybody's jockeying for position. But you look at the start of the fantasy football season, this is big. For people sort of mulling what they need to do for this starting weekend, what's the best piece of advice going in? Some people think too much, some people don't think enough. What do they need to do to get their upper edge going into week one?
I would say right now you have to look at it as you want to get ahead of the curve. And I dropped a piece I will drop a piece on Bleacher Report on Friday, basically giving my sleepers at each position, 2 a quarterback, 2 a running back, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. And what happens a lot of times is a lot of people will look at week one and they'll run out and go get the top performance from week one, and that guy won't do anything for the rest of the season. I believe Kelly Kreis talked about Sammy Watkins is known for doing this.
Yep.
He'll have 10 catches for 186 yards week one, and then you won't hear from the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Don't fall for the fool's gold. And I would say, look at the depth charts now before the first kickoff, before the Rams and Bills kick off tonight. Look at the depth charts. Find out who's starting. Find out who's rumored to get a lot of snaps, and go with that. Don't go with the hot ticket after week one. Go with the guy that's going to be in the starting position or going to have a prominent role for the duration of the season, because then you're going to be stuck with streaming 4 or 5 spots on your bench. And you want to have some stability. There's nothing wrong with streaming. Don't get me wrong. You want to stream at least a couple of spots every week because you want to move guys in and out. But stick with guys who are going to have sustained production, or could have sustained production, versus the fool's gold after week one. Be careful of that.
Good advice. Yes. And I would also, my advice would be, don't pay attention to the trending pickups and drops, because there's a lot of people out there who sniff glue and they don't know what they're doing. Right. So just be careful, stick to what you need. And Mo's advice was very good. Okay, Mo, we got to bet on the game now. What, if you beat me, what do I got to do? And if I beat you, Cheesecake, what do you, Cheesecake, have to do, Cheesecake?
So I guess I'm eating cheesecake if I
lose mint chocolate chip ice cream. You pick your poison.
You know what? I'm actually close to an ice cream parlor. I can pick up some mint chocolate chip.
And I will pay. I will pay.
Like 8 minutes. No, it's all good. I'll pay for it. It's no deal. It's no big deal. I'm not saying I'm a big time roller or anything. For anyone out there, I'm poor, by the way. Okay. But I can pay for the mint chocolate chip ice cream, and I'll eat some as I'm doing the show with you on air.
Okay, so now but what's my punishment if I lose?
I haven't really given that much thought. You know, it's very interesting. Do you have any ideas for yourself, Scott?
I don't. Sadly, I'm blanking.
I would say you gotta wear a blue Yankee cap.
A Yankee cap?
Yes, blue Yankee throughout the show.
Okay.
I eat mint chocolate chip throughout the show, or you wear a blue Yankee fitted cap or a snapback, or whatever, just a Yankee cap.
Okay, I will. Unfortunately, my wife is a Yankee fan, so we have one in the house. So,
so it's perfect.
Perfect. I've hidden it in the cat box. No, I've hidden it, but we'll find it, and that'll be the bet. Okay, so there we go, and we'll do that, and then we'll get some guys on the air as well when we see some key matchups. I've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to look at all the matchups, but there's some good ones in the league, and we will come back after on our Tuesday show, and we'll kind of do a report on how the season went. But check it out, and we'll post it on Twitter too. I'm sure we'll be talking trash to each other, and especially as the points rack in, and we'll have fun with it. It'll be good. But it's that time of the year too. It's fantasy football, so you can have your heart broken by the Raiders sometimes. You can have your heart broken by your fantasy team, or both. Those are the days that really stink. But it's that time of the year, man. Everybody's so excited. We are finally out of the darkness. It is time for NFL football. Mo, I'm excited. I know Sundays, Mo will join us when he can on the post-game shows. He has huge obligations with Bleacher Report on Sundays, so he'll jump in when he can. If not, Murph will be with us as well with the voice of the fan. But that's the next time we'll talk to you. We will talk to you on Sunday after the game. here on the podcast and on YouTube. So make sure you look for that. Mo, if we don't see you Sunday, we'll talk to you on Tuesday.
Absolutely. What I will say about this fantasy football matchup, usually I'm a slow starter in fantasy. I usually pick up in the middle of the season. But I will say, Scott, being that you had the first pick and I had the last pick, you should win this matchup.
Yeah, that's true.
You absolutely should win this matchup.
Although I as I keep saying, and I told you guys a few weeks ago when we drafted early, my starting lineup is fine. My bench is not great. So if I have trouble, and I think there's 1 week where I'm really screwed because of buys. It just happens that way sometimes. But we'll see how it goes. I'm going to have to get off to a quick start in case I have any injuries.
Good luck to the best man, best fantasy football player, best fantasy football manager win.
Or a woman, because see a Blue Yankee in the league.
I mean, between us.
Oh, between us.
Assuming that we're both men here.
Yes, we're
between
gentlemen.
us. May the best man win between us. I'll honor my bet, and I'll hopefully you'll honor yours. I'm sure your wife. If you have to reach out, let her know. Like, look, Scott has to wear this cap if he loses.
Oy.
If I have to do that, don't make me come find you, Scott. If I have to.
No, I'll deliver on my end of the bet. There's no question. All right, Mo, thanks, brother. Okay, we are off. We're done. It is time to end this edition of Silver and Black today. Enjoy the Chargers versus the Raiders. We will talk to you after the game. Myself and Murph from Raiders Fan Radio. If Mo can jump in, he will. Even if it's for 2 minutes. If he can't, he can't. But we'll get his view of the game early next week as well. For all of us here at Silver and Black today, we thank you for watching this small little hobby of ours that we do. And the podcast has been great, and we appreciate the support. So thank you all. And Raider Nation, take care of one another, and we'll talk to you on Sunday. Take care.